Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 3. And what do people want, what do the players want Creative Assembly to do regarding the future of the game? I asked this question yesterday, 20 hours ago, on my YouTube channel. What do you want CA to do with Warhammer 3 once the next game is out? So once Creative Assembly has released a new game, which they are going to announce this December, based on their public statements, what do you want CA to do? 46% voted for a big ending with Nagash. 34% want smaller DLCs post-End Times expansion, or just DLCs in general post-End Times, because we know End Times is very likely coming, so Nagash, Tankwell, etc. 16% want End Times plus regular patches. And then 4% are basically like, end it now. No more DLC, end it with Tides of Torment. Now, of course, one can argue, oh, it's only 600 votes and it's your community. That's not how YouTube polling works, because it's generally going to reach a wider audience than just your channel on any subject. And as for the results themselves, the percentages, while they can change as more and more people vote, the conclusion of these kind of polls is, generally speaking, decided, from my experience, around 100 votes in. And I speak here about polls that I've done with thousands and thousands of votes in the past. And very rarely have I seen a conclusion change. Though it's worth pointing out that's the perspective right now, given everything that Creative Assembly has done with Warhammer 3. Given the fact that we don't even know what the next Total War game is going to be. Sure, we have the leaks about 40k, the rumors and speculation about Medieval 3, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely, but it's not conclusive. And who knows, maybe Creative Assembly does surprise us in December and announces, I know, something like Lord of the Rings Total War. I would be very surprised if they manage that, considering the IP situation of Lord of the Rings. But it could happen. It's not outside the realm of possibility. In fact, on that subject, apparently Creative Assembly may have considered it, but it's actually difficult and expensive to get the license for it. And that was years ago. Nowadays, it's even more difficult. Just ask Amazon on that subject. But regardless, that's how people feel right now, given CA's handling of DLC, CA's handling of patches. If they were to change that, I'm sure those results would change. But what do those results indicate? Well, from my perspective, it's fairly clear-cut. A lot of people want a conclusion to the game. They don't want Creative Assembly to drag it on, milk it for money. That is absolutely a perspective that a lot of players do have. And it's not unusual, all things considered, with a game. A lot of players in any video game don't want to feel like the company is milking them for money and then not delivering good content. And that's exactly, by the way, how a lot of people feel about Creative Assembly at the moment. Whether or not you agree or disagree with that statement, for reference, I believe certainly Creative Assembly's stance right now is they just want to keep Warhammer 3 going and keep people engaged enough before they announce and release the next Total War game. That is their strategy. I think they were very clear on that. But regardless, a lot of people would be happy with a definitive end to Warhammer 3. Or people just don't care about Total War, they just want it to end and they want to move on. Whether or not people want to jump on another Total War game, or whether or not people believe Creative Assembly can even make a good Total War game, that's another perspective on that subject. That is a different situation. But clearly Creative Assembly is going to make another Total War game. Regardless of how we feel about it, regardless of how anyone feels about it, they are working on new Total War games. They need to. They can't keep 500 people employed given the current revenue they're getting from DLCs. That is just a fact. Now, could they do better with Warhammer 3? Undeniably so. I don't dispute that. But they've chosen their strategy. They chose it last year. They were very clear. They ended Pharaoh's support, shifted Sophia to Warhammer 3, and put pretty much everyone, or the vast majority of people in the UK, to work on new games. And also Sofia itself, a lot of people in Sofia are working on Alien Isolation too, just worth remembering that. Then on the flip side, you have the other attitude. You have people that really like Warhammer Fantasy and want to see it fully realized, so a lot of the characters that are on the tabletop or in books or in the lore that haven't been added to the game yet and they want to see them added in. Or you have people that just aren't sold on the idea of a future Total War game, so they want Warhammer 3 to be in the best possible state. And of course, there's all kinds of people in between them. Again, this is just a result at the moment, given community sentiment at the moment. I don't think that's, by the way, going to change just because of Tides of Torment. I think it would change if Creative Assembly changes their patching cycle, their DLC cycle, the way they do DLCs, the pricing, etc. There are things Creative Assembly can do. We've seen it with other developers. For my part, where do I stand on this? Well, here's my simple perspective on the matter. I think at one point, you should have a game that has a definitive ending, not just dragging it on. That's my view. I'm not saying that a game that goes on for years and years and years on end is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, God knows how many years I've spent in World of Warcraft until I just basically stopped caring. But Blizzard is certainly putting in that effort. I do, however, have the issue of the fact that there's so much monetization in that game. And monetization is something that does drive me away. And not just myself, there's plenty of people on that subject. So the way I see it, if Creative Assembly is not going to change the way they're doing patches, the way they're doing DLC, then yes, it should end. If it does change and they do introduce new improvements, if they do fix a lot of the issues with the code, with the engine, overhaul a lot of aspects of the gameplay, that could be a different discussion altogether. Do I expect Creative Assembly to do that? I don't really think so. At least not right now. They might do it if everything else fails. So basically, if everything else fails, their new Total War games don't do well, and Sega brings the hammer down, a lot of people are laid off, then you probably will have a custodian team, if you will, 50, 100 people maybe, that are just trying to improve the existing Total War games but not working on new ones. Of course, the dream scenario, I imagine, for a lot of people would be they do both. They work on new Total War games and they keep improving the existing ones. That is the dream scenario, but that's a unicorn level dream. It's not going to happen. I hate to say that because I know people are just going to curse me for saying that, but it is the truth. Tell me with a straight face that you believe Creative Assembly would do both of them. So just genuinely, do you think Creative Assembly is either willing or even capable of handling existing games, developing new games, and they're working on free titles, Isolation 2, one fantasy Total War game, one historical Total War game. Tell me with a straight face that they can build those games, maintain those games, and maintain existing ones and update them. I think you know what my answer would be on that. And that's where I stand. That's the reason why I think Creative Assembly needs a clean break. Also, the final reason for this really is the worst decision Creative Assembly or any developer has ever made in their company's history is when they try and do everything. If we look at Total War specifically, with Troy, I think the thing that really undermined Troy is they couldn't decide if they wanted it to be mythology or historical. And then they tried to do it both. Truth behind the myth, then mythos mode, then historical mode, it ended up being a mess. Because it means that you have all these modes, how do you balance them? Well, generally, you either split your resources and then end up getting screwed in all of them, or you focus on one to the detriment of the others. That's, by the way, exactly what happened with Free Kingdoms. I mean, certainly the main catalyst for Free Kingdoms' failure was the DLC, but Free Kingdoms' principal problem as a game beyond the DLC is the fact that they were doing both records and romance. Regardless of where you stand on records and romance, regardless of whether or not you're a historical fan or a fantasy fan, regardless of that, personally, I'm a big fan of both history and fantasy, but trying to do both at the same time just means a lack of focus, lack of resources, and realistically, what developers are going to do, they're going to pick one main mode to balance around, and they're just going to throw scraps for the other one. And that's generally the reason why I want focus from developers, because I've seen many times before when they just start tackling too many things at once. In fact, this very year, the exact problem that we've had with Total War this very year, the delays of the DLC, the patching issues, etc., is precisely because instead of focusing on certain issues, CA focused on many different issues. Race reworks, bug fixing, sieges, AI, campaign AI, proving grounds, and then a DLC with probably the largest number of monsters in the history of Total War. And the reason that's noteworthy is we know from previous statements over the years from Creative Assembly that making a big single entity is actually the most expensive part of a DLC. I'm not saying that Creative Assembly said that. I'm just repeating it. So it's kind of weird seeing how many single entities do we have? 5 already? Like 2 for High Elves? No, 3 for High Elves. 2 for Slaanesh, if I'm not mistaken. 5 or 6, regardless, for Tides of Torment. That's a pretty big amount. And it might be even higher than that, right? Because High Elves have 3. Sure, you can say 2 of them are the same unit, just different, textures, etc. Sure, fair enough, but all the same, it is very ambitious. And sometimes your ambitions outrun your capabilities. Why do you think Tides of Torment has been delayed multiple times? And some would say, oh, it's the controversy that delayed it. I want to remind people, CA never gave us a firm release date on Tides of Torment until now. So they were aiming for late October. They might not have realized it regardless of what happened over this last month. So anyway, for the future of Total War, yeah, have a clean break, have a focus on next Total War games, do Nagash, do Tankwell, do Valten, etc. And apparently a lot of people do agree with that sentiment, unsurprisingly. Costin, signing out.